Good morning, everybody. This is episode 8 of the Off Topical Podcast. My name is Gardiner.
My name's Raven.
And the Linux kernel maintainers have released a new document outlining how the code of conduct will be interpreted and enforced. Does it spell the end for Linux? Plus, Valve removes macOS support from Proton. What does that mean for the future of PC gaming? And there were a bunch of releases this week in the open source world. All of this and more today. But first, if you've ever caught one of my live streams, there's a good chance you saw it on YouTube. Well, I was actually able to get affiliate status with Twitch, and I'm going to be streaming exclusively there for a while. Feel free to follow me or even subscribe if you'd like. Twitch.tv/Zondak. XONDAK. And now, let's get to the good stuff. Valve removes macOS support. Did you hear about this, Raven?
I did. Honestly, I didn't know it had it to begin with. I mean, I know it worked, in quotes, because, Proton is basically just wine.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that Mac people could just, could they actually use the client and download Windows games?
It didn't work with the client. You have to build it yourself and then, launch games using a Proton prefix.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, honestly, given the fact that Macs really don't have proper OpenGL support.
Or Vulkan support.
Yeah, they don't have Vulkan support. And I know everyone's like, but you can use Molten VK. Yeah, but Molten VK, to my knowledge, doesn't fully support every feature that Vulkan does. I mean, Metal supports everything that Vulkan supports, but not Molten VK.
Yeah.
And since it sits in the middle, if it doesn't support everything, then, you might get a lot of problems. So
yeah, and using Molten VK with Proton is like having a wrapper for your wrapper. It would be like translating DirectX into Vulkan and then using Molten VK to translate it into Metal. It's like it's like that meme with what's his name, the rapper guy. I can't even remember, but you know who I'm talking about. Yo, dog, I gave you this thing for your thing, so you can have a thing in your thing, and it's like that's what Proton is on Mac.
Oh, that's an XKCD comic, isn't it?
I don't know. It might. I've only seen it as an image macro.
I bet he's done one like that, though.
Yeah, probably. But what's interesting, if you check out the official Proton GitHub repo, there's an interesting commit. It says, remove macOS support. And they did everything where they modified a bunch of files that removed all references to compiling Proton for macOS. And they removed several submodules, including Molten VK, and they just removed them completely from the project. I thought that was fascinating.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough that, we're going to use, that people want to use and play games that only work on Windows. And that's bad enough, but now it's like, let's take one proprietary platform and move to an even more closed platform. And I'm sure someone out there is, but Apple releases some of their stuff open source. Yeah, who cares?
I mean, Microsoft does too.
Yeah, so does Microsoft. I mean, they do release some of this components of macOS, and I put that in quotes because it's kind of useless.
Yeah. There are 2 comments on the GitHub page for that commit, and it's one of them said, even though I'm a Linux user, it does feel sad that our fellow Mac users won't be able to share the same joy that we do. On a side note, is this a temporary or permanent decision? I think that this is a permanent decision, personally. I made a video a couple whenever, it was the second week after Proton had been released, and I made a video explaining why Proton would never come to the Steam client on Mac because, it doesn't make sense according to Valve's business model. I think the reason that they built Proton in the first place and integrated it with Steam is to make it much easier and simpler for game developers to bring their games to Linux. And even if they don't, Valve can do some of the heavy lifting there and bring AAA games that everybody wants to play to Linux. Because Linux, a lot of people said that Linux was Valve's escape route, right? Because of Windows 8. And then when Windows 10 came out, Valve kind of lost interest. I don't think that's true. They've been pushing update after update towards SteamOS. It really is. I mean, I think Gabe hit the nail on the head when he said Linux is the future of gaming. It's the only open platform that's left in the gaming world. And I really believe that it's what we need for PC gaming. That's part of the reason I started my channel, was because I believed in Linux gaming. I believed in Linux as a platform for the desktop in general. And,
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I remember, speaking of, I remember back when the Steam beta was announced, and I was a dual booter back then, so I had I had a folder, and it was just filled with a bunch of Humble Bundle games, because Steam wasn't out, so it didn't really have a lot of stuff on there, and I was just playing up. I mean, I was spending more time in Linux because gaming's a big part of me. I love to game. Not as much, don't have as much time as I used to for it, but I still really, really enjoy it.
yeah.
And having to switch back and forth meant that I would either sometimes just stay in Windows, or I'd be in Linux and then I'd have to reboot. And I remember being so excited and getting into the beta. Oh my God, I got into the beta.
Oh, yeah.
And there was nothing there.
Right.
But I was still really excited. And then the games, it's impressive. I remember when we hit that 100 game milestone, and then 200, and then 300, and now it's over 3,000 or something, 3,500, something. It's ridiculous, the number of Linux games. It's it's just, there's so many now. I'm just that's trash. That's trash. I don't want that one. No. Because I used to buy all the Linux games, even though regardless of if they were good or not.
Yeah.
And now I'm just nah, now I have to work for my money. But I believe with you that this is a permanent solution. Unless something changes in the Mac world.
Yeah.
If Apple's hey, we're going to support Vulkan, I could see them, I could see them bringing it back. But if they don't support Vulkan, then I don't see it. Also, with Mac's own terms of service saying you cannot use wrappers, I just don't see the point.
I don't trust Apple with any of this stuff, and I don't think that they'll ever make that concession to developers. They're pretty hostile towards everyone on their platform.
Man, they're hostile to their repair teams, man.
Yeah.
Oh, every time the horror stories come out from the third party repair people, the people that actually keep people using Mac, in my opinion, it's not Apple. I'm actually, honestly, I really do feel it's the third parties that's keeping at least half of Mac's people still using a Mac.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine if every single time your Mac broke and they just wanted another $1,500, or hey, just buy a new one? What kind of repair policy is that? Just buy a new one.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Macs, honestly. I'd rather use a Mac than a Windows PC, but that's because I'm a person.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Yeah, you want to take this next one?
Right. So the next one is the game developer who revoked a Steam key after a negative review. Did you see this before I had sent it to you, by the way?
I had heard about it, and I hadn't looked into it at all. I didn't know it was about a Linux game.
Yeah. Have you played Depth of Extinction? I've never played it.
No, I haven't played it.
Oh, okay. It looks kind of cool. It's got I don't know, it's got a nice vibe to it for me, but I mean, I don't know if I'm just going to say this up front since the beginning of this conversation here.
Yeah.
The developer did apologize for this and did give back the player a new key.
Okay.
So the player did apologize for it. But I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I understand, you're an indie developer. You've poured all your money and time and energy and effort into making something that you think is fantastic. People aren't, you can't please everyone, or at least I hope, people would know that anyway.
Right.
So you're always going to have some people, but for some reason, this person's review, this is just, I don't know what it did. I don't know if it was that last straw or whatever, but he just kind of roid raged on the poor guy.
What did he even say? What did the review say even?
So I'll just jump down to the pros and cons because he has multiple paragraphs. Maybe we can put this in the show notes because it's actually fairly, it's a well thought out review.
Right.
So the pros, it is certainly a labor of love. See, he even knew. And you can play with just a mouse. That's interesting. Cons, the only novel thing here is the mix of XCOM gameplay with FTL node-based overworld movement, and I don't think that it works well. The gameplay is too standard. It needs to have some original ideas. This is very indie, and then in parentheses, which is fine, but has too many rough edges to merit the asking price. Unfortunately, I don't find it addicting at all. That's a very interesting thing. So in order to like a game, it has to be addicting.
Apparently.
Eh, I can actually see that. To keep you coming back.
Yeah.
The enemies say some really wonky and random stuff like fee fi fo fum and odd expletives that I won't say here.
Hmm.
Sadly, this is a hard pass for me. So how much is this game? It's $20.
Yeah, $20.
I don't know. What do you think of the developer's reaction to?
See, I didn't know that it was even possible for a developer to revoke a key.
Yep, sure is.
That's fascinating to me. I think that it's. I think there are a lot of people who overreact to criticism. I've been known to overreact to criticism every once in a while. But the thing is, it's like, why would you revoke someone's key? They only put an hour and 25 minutes or so into this, an hour and 15 minutes into this game, according to the review here. And it's like, if he said he's not going to play it anymore, why even bother revoking his key in the first place? Like, that just seems... There are two reasons that a developer would do that. First is to get publicity, right? Which is pretty cynical, and that's not where my brain immediately goes. The second reason is just to spite the person. And it's like, you can't live your life either way, in my opinion. You need to, I don't know. Did he pay for this game?
Because he was able to revoke the key, most likely he received it through some channel, but
Oh, see, on the Gaming on Linux post, it says, Depth of Extinction is a game that went through Itch's first access program where they sold limited amounts of keys across various rounds. Like a lot of games that start off on itch.io, the developer promised a Steam key when the game made it into Valve's store. So to make matters worse, this was a user who helped fund them a little bit before the wider release.
well, that's even worse.
Yeah.
So that's how I was able to do it. Because
Yeah.
if you purchase anything off Steam, a developer cannot revoke your access to it, no matter what you do.
Right.
Valve can, but I don't foresee Valve even remotely entering that minefield. I wouldn't be surprised if Valve may have stepped in here at some point.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that.
No, I mean, if the guy paid for this, even kind of secondhand or what, I don't know exactly what the word is, but if he paid for it in any way, shape, or form, it shouldn't be able to be revoked. I don't know.
Usually when you see developers revoke a key, it's like when someone gets it from like G2A or something.
Right, like from a unscrupulous place.
Yeah, I mean, usually if the developers will tell you to send us your key and we'll try to work with you and get you a new key, because
Yeah.
they don't want people to feel cheated because they did technically pay for it. But G2A is pretty famous for a lot of those keys are bought with stolen cards and all kinds of other problems.
Yeah.
So, but I found this and I sent it to you because it blew me away that someone would be that dumb in this day and age to
I know.
actually poke that bear. Why? Why would you do that? Because there's nothing good is going to come from that. And I mean, I think it's great that the developer apologized, but I don't think it really matters. I mean, the developer needed to apologize,
Yeah.
but I think they'll forever be tarnished by this. It'll take a lot of work, and I'm sure they got review bombed by some people, no doubt.
I don't like that. It's wrong to do that to somebody. So there were a bunch of new releases this week. Did you hear about any of these?
No, actually.
No. So
No, I've been kind of out of it.
Mozilla just released Firefox 63.0, which is pretty cool. It brings a couple new and interesting features to Firefox. One of them brings Firefox up to parity with other platforms. Out-of-process extensions are now a thing on Linux, which they weren't before. That's interesting to me. I don't know why they didn't have out-of-process extensions on Linux before now. Do you?
Honestly, I have no idea. It could be a Linux related thing, or it could just be that like everything else, Linux gets it last.
Yeah.
Kind of like how it took years to get hardware acceleration on Linux, even though, the Windows version had it. I mean, in fairness, you could just enable it, but it wasn't ready yet. We just seemed to get the short end of the straw at the end of the day.
It's unfortunate, but at least we have hardware rendering on Firefox, and even though we'll never get it on Chrome, as they say,
Never will.
never will. Tab switching is also a thing, or tab switching previews is now a thing, which is interesting. I installed version 63 of Firefox last night, and I tried doing the tab switching previews, and I don't know why it's not working for me.
It doesn't work?
I don't know. It doesn't. I held control and hit tab, and it doesn't come up with anything.
That's weird. So it's literally kind of like, when you alt tab on the desktop, I assume that's what it is. It's literally exactly like that. And you get the little preview window in like the middle. Yeah, I don't know. It just says it's a new feature, but it doesn't say how to use it. I would just assume you hold control and hit tab.
Yeah.
That would be, that would be my thing. Or maybe it's not working yet on Linux.
Maybe that's not good.
Maybe that's why it's not there, because they haven't enabled it yet for Linux. It's just a Windows only feature.
The control tab shortcut for switching between open tabs will show a thumbnail preview of each open tab. Oh, you have to enable it in about preferences. That's why it wasn't working.
Oh.
Control tab.
So tab switching previews literally means tab switching previews is a preview. Okay. Gotcha, Mozilla. But you have to enable it and see if it works. Yeah. I don't really enjoy new versions of Firefox anymore, I have to be honest. Like, I'm starting to like pay more attention to what they're doing before I update, because I hate Pocket, for example. It's always there. So I have to use Iceweasel or whatever the other one is that doesn't have all that stuff, but it has like the DRM stuff, but not Pocket.
Right.
I'm really tempted to go to Brave.
See, my thing, I've tried Brave, and I've tried Vivaldi, and I've tried a bunch of those other ones that are based on like Chromium, and like, man, I don't know why they all insist on having an ugly interface.
Yeah.
Like, interfaces that are like not native to like whatever desktop environment I use, like, really piss me off. Like, if I'm on GNOME 3, or if I'm on XFCE, and like it's a Qt app that opens, and I just want to throw my computer. Like, it's gross to me. I hate it.
You get that really old look, like Windows 98 has infected your machine somewhere along the way.
Right. Like, I can tolerate it with like KdenLive in GNOME, because like I can put KdenLive into like dark mode and not just like look past the icons inside the buttons. Like, that irritates me. And icons and menus irritates me too. But like, I can't use Vivaldi or Brave. I don't even know. I think the last time I tried Brave, it was like distributed as an app image, and it just didn't seem to work. Or I don't know what it was. There's something weird about it being in an app image. It might have like taken up a whole crap load of system resources, and that's why I didn't mess around with it. But I don't know.
I for all the faults that I keep having with Firefox, I keep coming back to it personally. Because it just works, and I like playing around with WebGL and all that sort of stuff. And honestly, your two choices is Chrome or Firefox when it comes to that. I don't know how well Brave support for WebGL is, and just because it uses WebKit doesn't actually mean it has good support for WebGL, which is something really interesting that I had to learn the hard way when I was trying Elementary OS a few years ago, and they have that Midori. I don't know what they have now, and it uses WebKit, doesn't really support WebGL.
Does Web Positive support WebGL?
Web Positive?
Yeah.
And another web browser?
That's Haiku's web browser.
Yeah, actually it does.
Nice. That's awesome.
I mean, it's like, emulated in software mode on the processor, but yeah, it does actually.
That's cool though.
I don't know how well, but I haven't done anything like extensive with it. I just know that it does to an extent.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm interested as a web developer is that the dev tools now have an accessibility inspector. And according to Mozilla, this tool surfaces information exposed to assistive technologies on the current page, allowing you to check what's missing or otherwise needs attention. That's pretty cool. I've never had
That
a
is
tool
really
like
cool.
that, so I'm really glad that that's going to be part of it here.
I really love Mozilla's DevTools.
Me too.
They've been such a lifesaver.
Oh my god, I love them. And one of the things that I love the most about the DevTools is the simple fact that you can edit the style sheet and it takes effect immediately. Like,
I know, isn't that great?
like on Chrome, you can't actually edit the style sheet. You can edit like the DOM interpretation of the style sheet when you use the inspection tool on an element, but you can't like modify the actual style sheet. Why not, man? Come on.
I know some people really like the Chrome DevTools, but I've always preferred Mozilla's.
Yeah, I like Mozilla's. Mozilla's are my favorite by far. I only use Chrome's DevTools when I absolutely have to. Like if I'm debugging my phone's Chrome version.
Lovely.
Cool. We also have coming out this week Linux Kernel 4.19. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's an LTS release too, which is great.
Yeah, I think this is one of like 5 current LTS versions. Is that right?
It might be. They'll probably drop one of them. I hope they do, because
Yeah.
you don't need to maintain like 5 different versions of the Linux kernel at once.
Right.
I mean, because if you're using hardware that old where you'd have to go back like, to some version of like Linux 3 or even 2, it's like I think that will work just fine what you currently have.
Yeah.
It might not cost that much to maintain either. So.
Right. I think it's a lot of like just backporting of security updates, right?
Usually.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see these new releases. Like, they're supporting new hardware like the Qualcomm Adreno 600.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Be great for phones.
Definitely. And they're also adding support for 802.11ax, which is the latest generation Wi-Fi standard.
Nice. So in like 3 years, we'll get
Yeah.
routers and stuff that use it.
But it's always nice to have that stuff, debugged and implemented early. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Oh wow, AX allows 11 Gbits.
Whoa.
Hey, finally, we actually have a standard now that can actually support my internet.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Another interesting thing is the GPS subsystem that's now officially part of the kernel called GNNS. The interesting thing about this is that there's a lot of like GPS hardware that's supported by the kernel, but they're all kind of doing their own thing. And the GNSS is all about like, creating a standard way to interface with GPS devices, and that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. I mean, I'm getting the Purism phone so I can hardware switch kill it, but
Yeah, right.
it is nice, because hopefully that means less black box code, parked
Yeah.
on your device.
Right.
Yeah, at least it's there. You can see it. No one will care, but at least that one guy, that one woman will care, and they will be able to do something about it. I also like the KVM improvements. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, definitely. I actually have a VM set up on my my server back here, doing some fun things with that. More to come on that.
Nice.
So, Nextcloud and Collabora. In a post on their blog, Nextcloud announced a deepening of their relationship between Collabora and itself. Now, this is cool stuff because for those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Nextcloud fan.
Yes.
I love Nextcloud. Oh, it's so cool. Basically, Nextcloud is like a self-hosted and open source Dropbox or Google Drive alternative, right? And Collabora is a self-hosted Google Docs-like app for Nextcloud. And it does a little more than that. You actually have to set up a whole Collabora server, and then you have to interface them to each other. So it's not for the faint of heart, but it's so cool because Collabora basically works like Google Docs, where you can like, Raven and I can open the same document through our web browser, ODT format, or it supports DocX and PowerPoint and all the proprietary ones too. But we can both collaboratively edit that document at the same time. And that's really cool. So in their blog post, they highlighted several new features that'll allow for a deeper integration of Collabora into Nextcloud. Because right now it's kind of a janky setup. Wouldn't you agree?
I think that's almost an understatement. Because we use it to write the show.
Yeah.
And, as I was telling you earlier, I was trying to scroll up when you were typing and you kept dragging me back down. And I just wanted to choke you and be like, stop! I want to go to the top of the document. And you were just like, no. Kept dragging me back down to the bottom.
Yeah.
So I gave up, literally gave up until he was done writing. And then I scrolled up. So yeah, it's a little, it's a little janky at the moment. It's not perfect, but it is amazing to have because there's no Google. It's hosted on your server. So unless someone gets into your server, all of these podcast documents will be safe.
Right. I actually share the podcast documents on the show notes too, actually.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So a couple of things that they're actually doing now, and there'll be a link to all the cool stuff that they're adding to Collabora in the show notes, patreon.com/LinuxGamer if you're interested in checking that out. And a couple of things that they're doing are adding the ability to insert images from your Nextcloud instance into your documents, which for some reason you couldn't do until now. But it's cool that it's there now.
That actually seems like an obvious act, honestly. But I guess since they weren't really working together, they were just kind of using each other.
Right.
There you go, I guess.
Yeah. Another cool thing is being able to see a user's avatar while they're editing the same document as you, which you couldn't do before. You'd only see like their username. You'll also be able to view and reply to comments left in the document, as well as open a chat message with the user or send them an email. You can also open the sharing panel and share the document while you're editing it, which is really cool. I can't tell you how many times I've had to like back out of editing the document and click the share button. But now that's all handled within Collabora, and that's really awesome. One of the things I'd like to see from Collabora, though, is some kind of mobile app. If one exists, I haven't been able to find it. If you know of one, let me know in the show notes or send me an email, gardiner@offtopical.net. Do you have any more thoughts on this story, Raven?
I didn't know that they were going to basically copy, not necessarily copy, but, because Google Docs, it already has the ability to see, like leave comments and then reply to them. And,
yeah.
It's great that they're basically going to be feature compatible with Google Docs.
Right.
Which is, to me, that is the best part because I hate Google Docs. For starters,
Me too.
When they first announced it and then you can go and use it, it wasn't really that bad. It was really cool. It was really impressive. And now it's just a nightmare. Because have you actually used it recently?
Not
within the past year or so?
I mean, probably within the last 6 months I've used it.
It's so hard and annoying to find your documents. You notice that? Everything's all spread out.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just me, cranky, old, get off my lawn type crap. But I literally have issues sometimes finding documents in there, like old documents that I've worked on, and I just want to save them and then delete them.
Right.
It's just like someone just vomited all over the screen. Like, here's all your stuff. I mean, sure, if it's a recent document, it's there. But if you view another document that's public, then that means it goes there in your recent. And it's but it's not my recent document. All I did was view a public document that I couldn't edit. And I don't know, for some reason that annoys me, but I hate the interface for it. And Google Docs, not Google Docs, Collabora just reminds me of a really simple word editor that actually has a lot of features, actually.
Yeah. And the fact that it has ODT documents, that's
I know.
really awesome.
I can just shoot it straight to Libra if I want to. It's great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So one of the cool things about Nextcloud is you can integrate it with GNOME. And when you do, you end up getting a WebDAV mount in Nautilus, and you can click on that and open documents as if they're part of your file system. They also have a little Nextcloud app that does background syncing, but that kind of ends up annoying me a lot of the time. But you can edit any of these files in OpenOffice, or LibreOffice, I guess, which I just showed my age there. Holy crap. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I really, really am a huge fan of Collabora and Nextcloud. I highly recommend it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The only downside to it is you need somewhere to set it up.
I mean, you definitely need to have a bit of a beefier setup in terms of your server, and it's pretty cool. Definitely worth setting up if you have a chance.
Absolutely.
All right, this is going to be an interesting conversation. The CoC interpretation document. What do you think about this, man?
Well, we've had some lovely debates about this code of conduct. I like the new changes. I'm just going to say straight off the bat, I think they're just going to basically keep making changes to this code of conduct till the thing is just purged away.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they've made a lot of changes, and some of it they had to make. Because, there are some rather glaring holes in that code of conduct. Yeah. And also, too, I think despite them kind of downplaying it, I think they had a lot more disgruntled people than they wanted or thought they would have.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people on Twitter who I saw who got upset, and a lot of people in the YouTube comments. But like, my question is, how many of them are actually like part of the Linux kernel development? Like, and I don't think that necessarily matters. But it's also like, does that go into the maintainer's decision here to kind of provide this interpretation document where it kind of neuters a lot of the weirdness of the code of conduct itself?
I don't know. I mean, like you said, there were some people who got kind of, mad about it, but they're also not like doing anything like themselves
right
on the Linux kernel. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't get a say because they're also Linux users.
Oh, I agree.
And
yeah.
So that kind of became another really sticky topic because, some of those people might grow up to actually, because, some of them are young. And they might actually grow up to join the Linux,
right.
community as maintainers, and now they might not because they don't like the code of conduct. Or they'll join because they like the code of conduct. So I think this was like a nice step towards kind of like trying to appease both sides because they didn't get rid of it completely, but they did neuter it, and quite heavily in certain areas. Like, for starters, they actually defined stuff.
Yeah.
And that is probably the worst part about that code of conduct. Nothing is defined. That was honestly ignoring the person who made the code of conduct, because I wouldn't use it because that person just seems a little too political for me. Like, I don't like injecting political stuff into open source projects because I just feel it has no place there. But the code of conduct is now defined now. Like, what gets you in trouble? What doesn't get you in trouble? Who's in charge of making sure that it gets sent to the tab, the technical advisory board, all that sort of stuff. Or no, wait, that's not who. Wait, who does it go to?
It goes. So there are volunteers for the technical advisory, or they're from the technical advisory board, and they're part of the code of conduct enforcement committee or something like that.
Right, because they were already there. Because I mean, as much as people kind of said Linux needed it, Linux has, for a very long time now, has already had a community of people handling disciplinary stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just most people who code on Linux just only care about code, so they probably haven't really had a whole lot to do. Which is great, because they shouldn't have anything to do. Because, I mean, come on, we're all adults here. We should act like adults.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I like it, but I honestly feel they're just going to eventually just purge this thing and then just boot it out the door.
I don't disagree with you there. I think like this is like the first step towards middle ground, if you will, between the people who are pro CoC and the people who are like vehemently against the CoC. I just thought it was very interesting, like that they tried to allay some fears here with some of the wording, like. Basically, they defined what a maintainer is, because the CoC uses the term maintainer a couple times, and maintainers are people who are listed in the maintainers file in the kernel source tree, which is that. So that basically means like if you are contributing like actively to the project, then you're subject to these terms, and only subject to them if you're going through official channels, which the official channels are also listed in the maintainer's source file, and like they're specifying like the official ways that different subgroups within the kernel development team actually communicate with each other, mostly through mailing lists. So, basically what they said is, in the end, be kind to each other is really what the end goal is for everyone. We know everyone is human and we all fall flat sometimes, but the primary goal for all of us should be to work towards amicable resolutions of problems. Enforcement of the code of conduct will only be a last resort option. And I think that's great.
Oh yeah. Well, see, what people are worried about is because it's so easy to violate the code of conduct.
Yeah.
Like, you tell someone their code is bad and they get upset, you violated the code of conduct. Like, that's how vague it was.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some people out there like, no, that's not how it is. But that's actually how that code of conduct is worded. Like, maybe that might not have ever happened. Sure. But since it was there, all it takes is one person to set that precedent. And then the next thing you know, you have a nightmare on your hands.
Yeah. And another thing that I heard a lot of people complain about with the CoC was the fact that, like, what about all the existing, swear words and like all the humbuggery in the actual source itself? And they actually talk about that in this interpretation document, and it's really cool. Basically, they said that content that already exists predating the code of conduct will not be addressed now as a violation, which is something a lot of people were worried about happening, and that any inappropriate language can be seen as a bug, and such bugs will be fixed more quickly if any interesting parties submit patches to that effect. That's pretty cool. That, there's a lot of comments. I mean, I remember several years ago, I read about like the number of times the F-bomb occurred in the source code, like in the comments and stuff. And it's like, I'm sure that there's a lot more spicier memes in there than just the F-bomb. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. You should go read some of the source sometimes. It's a laugh, some of the comments in there.
And that's a really great middle ground as far as I'm concerned for tackling that kind of stuff, where it's going to be seen as a bug, and it's not going to be seen as a violation of the code of conduct. And again, I heard a lot of people say that specific thing was a big problem for Linux. And I'm glad that they've addressed that. They've tackled that problem,
Oh, absolutely. Because, Linux, well, no, I'm not even going to say Linux. I'm just say programmers in general can at times be pretty crude and vulgar about their hatred for the code they're working on at that particular moment. And even with this code of conduct, I don't feel that, a swear word every now and again is really actually that bad of a thing. I mean,
Right.
At the end of the day, we're all adults, and sometimes, a harshly, the appropriate, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's always like a time where it actually is kind of appropriate, regardless of what some people say. Like, that is the best way to define the problem that you may or may not be having at that moment. Right. Even if some people disagree with that, that's fine. Just my opinion on it. And also, I'm not bothered by swear words. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not bothered by swear words that much, but it's also like they said some other things that aren't necessarily just swear words.
I know. The Linux kernel, since its inception, has had its lovely little moments where maybe it got a little childish and immature. But on the other hand, that's also what makes it the Linux kernel. And I don't mean like the vulgarity of it, just the fact that it kind of just lives in the moment sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which, some people disagree with. I guess some people just want to see Linux grow up, but I don't, because, if it grows up, then it's become boring. And then that means the corporations will pretty much have won, and, I'll have to live on Haiku, which I would totally do if something ever happens to Linux. So
yeah, no, I'd go to Haiku too. Haiku's rad. That's our backup plan, our apocalypse scenario.
And then just live on that and just enjoy.
Live on the land.
I know. I think that they did a nice job, and people were much more receptive to this than they were with the first drop. Honestly, I think they pushed the code of conduct too hard, too fast, too quick. They didn't even ask anybody what they thought of it, really. They just dumped it in the mailing list, and it immediately got approved by a bunch of Facebook and Google people.
Right. Yeah.
And then, so people were like, oh, corporate overlords are taking over.
Yeah. I don't know. We want to know what you guys think. Are you still fire and brimstone over this, or does this clarify things of how the Code of Conduct will be interpreted, or were you even scared to begin with? Let us know. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below, or you can send me an email, gardiner@offtopical.net. There's lots of ways to get in contact. Canonical launches their statistics site, and I was informed by, was it you, Raven, and a couple of people in the chat on my last stream, that Ubuntu has actually changed it so that you have to opt in to the statistics gathering?
Yes, you do. Starting with 18.04, you have to opt in when during the install. I mean, you can obviously, do it after the fact, but if you just kill that, it'll never ask you ever again. See, Microsoft, that's how you do things.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I didn't hear about that until you guys told me like a couple nights ago. But that makes me a little more optimistic and wanting to actually look at some of this usage data. It's pretty fascinating stuff too. So if you go to ubuntu.com/desktop/statistics, you can see all these really cool things in an infographic style, all the information that they've gathered. I thought it was really cool when you look at where Ubuntu users are reporting they're from. This is location data that's derived from user settings of time zones, not an IP address, right? And there's a lot of people in South America using it, a lot of people in Africa using Ubuntu, a lot of Scandinavian countries, which is assumed, and then there's a lot in Afghanistan, and also South Korea, Australia, and Russia. Those are the countries that use Ubuntu the most, right?
I think so, because they don't really specify. Like, for example, Mexico is,
oh yeah,
really, bright orange, but the U.S. is kind of like a dullish pink, I guess.
Right.
But there could still be more people in the U.S. using it. They don't really say.
They don't really show like an actual legend or anything.
In Russia, a lot of Russians do use Linux.
Yeah.
And that's probably just due to pure cost. Like, Windows is expensive.
Right. Yeah, and it seems like there's only 3 different shades of orange here too. So there's like the bright orange, and then there's a little a less fluorescent orange, and then there's a very faint orange color. And the United States is the faint orange color.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I wish they'd release just a little bit more information on it, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like numbers, because that would be great. I mean, I think it's fantastic. Like, I don't care where you're from. If you're using Linux, thumbs up. But I would like a little bit more information. I also like how they give information on like whether it's a physical machine or a virtual machine.
What do you mean?
At the top, at the very top, right next to how many users opted in, to the right of that, real or virtual machines. So you can see how many people are using it in a VM.
Oh, but they didn't give it hard numbers.
No, they didn't give hard numbers, but you can see the stats.
The proportion.
A lot of people use Ubuntu in a virtual machine.
Yeah, yeah.
But see, there's a lot of enterprise stuff there too. So the enterprise stuff might be skewing the number of people.
Is this only from desktops reporting? Or
only from people using Ubuntu that opt in? Yes.
Okay, fascinating.
So I don't know if, I mean, I hope they wouldn't put their IoT devices in here, because that would be kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But like Windows 10 has that, I forget what it's called, but where you can, basically at this point it's a virtual machine for Linux. But everyone watching this, or I guess listening to this, it has some pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah.
The desktop specs, the OS architecture, the display server, which, by the way, for all you Wayland people out there, it's 99% X11.
Yeah, but that probably has to do with the fact that they don't ship it with Wayland.
Maybe. Don't spoil my moment. Don't spoil you spoil my moment, bro. Don't do that.
Well, I'd like to point out that only about 3% of Ubuntu users are using any resolution higher than 920 by 1080, which is fascinating because everyone makes a big ruckus about 4K.
I have 4K monitors.
Do you?
Yeah, dude.
You're part of the 1%.
I love them. I know, right? Part of the 1%. It's crazy. They also report on the number of screens and the number of graphics cards. You know, that's pretty interesting that they actually check all of that.
Yeah.
Um, I wish they gathered because you know they want to keep it anonymous and they don't want to gather too much, so they don't really go into much detail. You know, like they can't give you a breakdown on what processors and you
Yeah.
know what graphics cards. So they just give you some really basic stuff, but at the same time, it's pretty interesting that the number of CPUs is like 1 to 3. I mean, honestly, you
Yeah.
know, I'm amazed that 27% are using 4 to 6.
Right. Does that seem low to you, or does that seem high?
4 to 6 processors? Because they're not talking about cores, we're talking about processors.
Oh,
Or at
really?
least yes. Well, that's what it says.
I would guess that it's
It
cores.
should it should be cores. I mean, sorry, it should be individual processors. Because
Oh,
if it was if it was cores, then the 4 to 6 would be the highest.
yeah. Some users reported having RAM upwards of 96 gigabytes.
I only have 64 gigs. I can't hit the 96 gig. I can't even imagine how much that would cost.
Oh my god, yeah. I have 16 because I'm cheap. If you guys would like to take a deep dive into these numbers, you can check it out. There's a link in our show notes, patreon.com/LinuxGamer, and let us know what you think about this. Let us know. All right, man. You think we have time for some user questions?
Oh, absolutely.
User questions. I mean, listener questions. All right. So, Web Slinger on YouTube asks, why does System 76 hate AMD? Now, I don't think that they necessarily hate AMD, but I want to know what your take is on this.
Oh gosh. Okay, so why does System 76 hate AMD? I don't think they do. I think it's a business decision and a smart one. In fairness, I know everyone's like, "Oh, but AMD's cheaper." True, but you also have to think of this. All their laptops are Clevo. Like that's where they get the motherboards, or at least where they get most of them. Because I'm sure, as most of you know, there is no standard for laptop motherboards, so you can't just go out and assemble one easily. Now, this might change in the future because you know System 76 is making its own desktop now, and they actually are hiring people to actually build, you know, and assemble boards. So
Yeah.
maybe in the future they will have their own board, and then they'll be able to use AMD stuff, just get their chipset and put it on the board.
Right.
But for right now, they have to use off-market stuff because you know they're not Dell. They're a small company. They don't have the resources to buy stuff. Because I mean, if they offered both Intel and AMD, their laptops would probably be a lot more expensive,
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
and their selection would be kind of weird too. Because System 76 seems to they offer some, especially with their laptops. You know, they try to offer as much configuration as possible, but really they only have like what 9 different configurations, and then like a CPU swap or a RAM swap.
Yeah.
I mean, or it's not even 9. I think it's like what, 6 or something. It's not that many. Probably another reason why their laptops are not AMD is just because how long has it been since AMD's actually made a decent laptop? Like a chipset for a laptop. How long has it been? It's been at least 5 or 6 years, probably longer. I mean, I'm sure some people are going to disagree with that, but they haven't. Intel and Nvidia have been making great laptops for a very long time, and AMD dropped the ball on that.
Yeah.
Now AMD's made some great, really cheap, crappy stuff that like, you know, E-Machines, which is like a Walmart brand or something, uses, but no, they just haven't. And as for desktops, it's probably just a cost issue. Why they haven't offered graphics cards, I don't know. But they buy things in bulk to save money, and well, that means you just end up purchasing a whole bunch from Intel and a whole bunch from Nvidia.
Yeah.
That's my guess anyway. It's a pure business decision, not a I don't like AMD sort of decision.
I mean, I would say you're not far off the mark there. The thing about System 76 you got to remember too is that like they are a niche company and they sell to a specific market of people who are Linux users and who don't want to, you know, build their own machine or to supply it to like companies that need a bunch of computers all at once and pre-built, you know. If you're selling to a small group of people and the perception in the community is that Nvidia is the superior performance, then, you know, of course you're going to provide the one that has the best performance. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's not necessarily true anymore, that's still like a major perception. I mean, I just released my video about my Vega 64, and a bunch of people were like, you made a huge mistake, man. Return that and get a GTX 1080i Ti. And I'm like, nah, man, I want this one because it's got open source drivers. But, you know, the fact is there's still this perception that you can't be gaming, you can't be doing stuff like, you know, compute on your GPU if you have an AMD card. And whether it's true or not, I mean, that's a reality that we face in the community.
Oh, absolutely. I think in the future they will start offering AMD.
Yeah.
AMD is still behind Nvidia, but it's not like how it used to be back when FGLRX used to be a thing. That
my
monstrosity.
God. Catalyst
Yeah.
Control Center.
Oh. But I actually think, because I'm sure, have you seen their new desktop, by the way, that they keep hinting at? They should announce it this week or next week.
I actually went out to System 76 and they showed me prototypes that I wasn't allowed to take photos of. I know what their new desktop looks like.
Fantastic.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, because I know that they've been working on it for a while.
Yeah.
But see, what strikes me as awesome is they're actually, you know, they're building it themselves.
I follow Carl Ritchell, who's the CEO, on Twitter, and I think I follow him on Instagram too. And he posts stuff all the time about like their manufacturing facility. I mean, they're building out their infrastructure to really change their business, and it's really cool and exciting to see. And his Twitter handle is at CarlRichell, and it's pretty cool. There's all kinds of stuff like just going on there right now. October 17th, one of our equipment suppliers encouraged me to stick my arm in the powder fluidizer. Totally worth it. And his arm is all covered in powder of some kind that looks metallic. He almost looks like Data from Star Trek. Pretty cool stuff. All right, let's see. Another question. Scratch OS on YouTube asks, a good mouse for gaming and video editing on Linux? What do you think, Raven?
Well, I had a Corsair, you know, one of their M models way back in like 2012. And then I had a power outage and it killed it, which bummed me out.
Damn.
It was really odd. It did work on Linux, but you had to set it had some weird, you know, precision issues. Like it was very fast, even when you set it to the lowest DPI. And I replaced it with the mouse that I still have for 5 years now, the Kova Rocat. I don't even think you can get this model anymore. And it works great. It plugged it in and it just worked.
Nice.
So if you want a good mouse for gaming, I would say Rocat. Any of them, as far as I know. They just work. There are some open source drivers that someone was working on. I don't know if he stopped or not, but they all should still work because, I mean...
Are you a wired guy or are you wireless?
Oh, I'm wired. You know my stance on wireless garbage. Well,
Nice.
It's like, I still have to plug up the USB port with this little dongle. And then, you know what I hate? I hate charging or putting batteries in a keyboard or a mouse.
Yeah.
For some reason, it just really, really annoys me.
Yeah. I'm wireless right now. I have the Logitech MX Master 2, which is, or I guess it's the original, not the 2. It's a superb mouse. I really, really love this thing. It's got dark field tracking for shiny objects, which works on like glass and all kinds of crazy stuff. It has multiple buttons and a horizontal scroll wheel, and it has like a task switching thumb pad, which will like change focus between windows for you. Almost like Alt Tab, but it doesn't quite work like that. It's fascinating. I really like this. I really like this mouse. It is wireless, and I do charge it like twice a month, maybe. I also have for my keyboard, I have the Logitech Craft keyboard. It's the one. It's very heavy. It's a chiclet keyboard with a backlight. It's very nice. I really like it. I need to replace the battery in it though, because the battery doesn't hold the charge very well.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Of course you do. Got to replace that battery. I have a Model M, so that's what I use.
Nice. Oh,
I know. It's still working.
yeah,
I have had to get new springs for it. That was fun to replace.
I've never been a huge fan of mechanical keyboards or buckling spring keyboards. I know. I'm a chiclet guy.
Go back to your Mac. Don't ever come back. Just go.
Okay.
I can't stand to see you like that. Just go. Become the Mac gamer.
Maybe for April Fool's Day.
Oh gosh. Doesn't like mechanical keyboards. I also have a Corsair that I don't use as often. I like my Model M. I know it's old and it doesn't have all the fancy features that all the other stuff does, but I like that little thing. Well, actually, it's not really that little, and it's also quite heavy.
Yeah.
It's got that lovely 4.5 pound steel plate in it.
Damn.
Actually, that one might be. I can't remember what. There were some. They made them out of different stuff. I think mine's steel. But it is nice. It's great. It still works. It sounds great. It's amazing to type on. It's great.
Nice.
You should get yourself one and come to the proper side of life and leave your crappy little chiclet behind.
I'm good.
Just abandon it.
It's a fun conversation to have. I really like it when you guys send us your comments, your questions. If you have a comment or a question, you can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at the Linux Gamer,
and I'm at Raven67854.
And you can let us know if you have a question. We'll be sure to read it on air. You can also send me an email, Gardiner@heavyelement.io. Leave a comment on the YouTube version of this, or go to the show notes and leave a comment there. But no matter what you do, this is the Off Topical Podcast. It's been real, and let's do it again sometime.